Good morning, everyone. The time being 10:03, I'm going to open the public hearing on SB 63 and recognize Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the Ways and Means Committee. It's happy to be back in my old stomping grounds, having served 3 terms in the House and sitting in this room on a regular basis. I am Senator Tim Lang. I'm the chairman of Ways and Means in the Senate now. I serve District 2 up in the Lakes region. So this bill is a correction bill. So back in 2021, when we changed the law to make sure that towns got 30% of all rooms and meals revenue, we created a new fund called the Rooms and Meals Revenue Reimbursement Fund or something like that. And the way DRA has interpreted that fund, the way it used to work was we're going to use some round numbers. We would bring in $100 million in revenue. The first thing that the state would do is scrape off 3.15% for the Department of Travel and Tourism to be able to market the state of New Hampshire, across our region, and everywhere else. And then what was left was divided up 30-70 between the towns and the state. The way, with that new law, the way it was passed, DRA changed the math model. So now what they do is you get $100, they scrape off the 30% for the town first, and then give travel and tourism 3.15% of the remaining. Now that may not sound like much, but on a budget, again, this $100 million we're talking about, it's about $1 or $1 million if we were using $100 million, the differential of doing it in math. And to a department, that's a big number to lose, and if you ever run a business, marketing, right, is what we do. That's how you grow your business. That's how you expand your business. That's how you keep your business going. So the idea behind this is to keep the marketing money of the state of New Hampshire where it was and fixes unintentional error. So this bill puts it back to the way it was. That $100 million would scrape off first the marketing money to the Division of Travel and Tourism and then split the revenues for the towns and state with what's left. That's simple. That's what the bill does.
Thank you. Representative Elmy.
Thank you. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what this was actually doing. It didn't sound like that. It's Roman 3 is part of Roman 1. So they're taking double for travel out of what's left.
That's not accurate, Representative Balmy. Again, speaking of DRA and the way they've interpreted this, again, when we changed Roman numeral 3 and created the Revenue Reimbursement Fund for the municipalities, they view that as the money has to come out of the gross first to the Revenue Reimbursement Fund, then tourism. This bill just inverts that math model so that tourism comes out first, and then whatever's left is split between the state and the town appropriately. And this bill was written with the assistance of DRA to make sure that was clear that was what's happening.
I hope we're going to be able to talk to DRA because I don't think that the verbiage is right. On the other thing about this is that it's confusing where the money is coming from. Is it coming from rooms and meals, or is it coming from the municipal amount?
Thank you very much for the question. Again, what this bill does is clarify in Section 1. So Section 3 created the reimbursement fund. And in Section 3, it says that 30% of all monies that collected will be put into the reimbursement fund. So DRA has read that's the priority first, and then the split between the state, the tourism department, and the state gets the rest. This makes it clear in Section 1 of that RSA that it's the split occurs again on the gross amount of revenue. Again, RSA 78-A:26 is the revenue split language. Roman numeral 3 is the thing that says that the reimbursement fund gets paid first, and then everybody else gets paid second. And what this bill does is it adds back that money to make it clear that it's all revenue, including what went to Section 3.
I think, well, just you haven't changed Section 1 at all.
Not at all.
So
It has to
Yeah,
do with the
I need
interpretation
to
of
talk
Section
to
3.
DRA.
I'm sorry?
I need to talk to DRA.
Sure.
I did pull down everything related to this, including 6, and last night, and I printed them out to share with people, and I forgot I'd done it when I went to bed. So,
Representative Schamberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator, for taking this question. How much of an increase above the present 13.5 or 10.5, I think was in here, that was defunded by the Finance Committee will go to tourism now?
sorry.
Estimated.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't look at that number. I'm waiting to see if we even get a budget.
Any other questions for Senator Lang? Yes, Representative Southworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. So, in a way, it's a standalone bill, but in another way, it could kind of be canceled by HB2, couldn't it? Depending on all those negotiations.
I serve on finance in the Senate, so I'm sure they'll align when I'm all done.
They'll do what? Good answer.
Okay, seeing no more questions, thank you. Next, I have Jessica Keeler, I'm sorry.
Good morning, Chairman Janigian and members of the committee. My name is Jessica Keeler. I am the president of Ski New Hampshire, which is a statewide nonprofit, member-based trade association representing over 30 ski areas throughout the state. I'm also here on behalf of other tourism associations and chambers that are concerned about our tourism budget as well. But in particular, we are here to emphatically support SB 63 because of its support for hospitality and tourism businesses and the greater travel and tourism industry in the state in general, which, as I'm sure you're well aware, is very critical to the state's economy. So Senator Lang was talking about what this does, and I don't know that I'm going to clarify anything there, but I will say that the passing this bill isn't going to change anything about the tourism budget that's been proposed for this year. So it would impact fiscal years the next round, the next cycle. One thing I want to note is that the 3.15% allocation to the promotional budget was actually offered as part of an agreement that was struck with the hospitality industry in 2009 when the state proposed to raise the meals and rooms tax from 8% to 9%. And so since 2009, the 3.15% was taken after disbursements for certain administrative costs and the Education Trust Fund, but before the municipal allocation of 30%. That statute was often suspended during the budgeting process, but if I believe I'm correct in saying that the promotional budget always started from that place and the same assumptions on that formula. However, in 2019, there was essentially a mix-up in the revision to RSA 78A26 that omitted the formula and put the municipal allocation before the allocation to the promotional budget, which effectively resulted in a decrease of 30% to the promotional budget. Despite that change, the promotional budget was actually funded as it was originally intended in 2009, or since 2009, with that 3.15% being allocated to the promotional budget after those administrative and educational trust fund expenses, but before the 30% municipal allocation. So over the last few years, we've really seen great results from travel and tourism's promotional budget spending from their efforts. We've seen increased visitation to New Hampshire. We've seen increased revenues at many tourism locations. And that has, of course, led to increases in the meals and rooms tax revenue, which last year is estimated to be around $328 million. I also want to just note here, too, that the tourism industry supports around 70,000 jobs statewide. Another important aspect of the budget is the Joint Promotional Program. This program is a matching grant program that 21 organizations took advantage of last year, including organizations like Ski New Hampshire, White Mountain Attractions, Lakes Region Tourism Association, the Hampton Area Chamber of Commerce, and others. The $1 million that was allocated for the JPP program effectively doubled to $2 million with the input of all these organizations. And if the formula isn't fixed for future budgets, it's possible that the program could be cut altogether, which would have catastrophic effects on the organizations that use them, as well as on those regions and industries like the ski industry that rely on those funds for promotion. So in summary, fixing RSA 78A26 so that the 3.15% for the promotional budget is added to the statute and factored before the allocation is done for towns is vital to ensuring that the Division of Travel and Tourism and its tourism partners statewide can continue the important work of attracting visitors to the state who are ultimately responsible for contributing hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue to the state and supporting tens of thousands of jobs as well. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Representative Elmy.
This is more, I was there in 2009. I was the one negotiating on our side. And I spent the next 8 years going to finance and telling them they had to keep it in. So
Thank you.
I do support doing this. I just want to make sure that it's done right so the next time DRA switches personnel, I don't reinterpret.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yes, Representative Opal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I actually have two questions, but my first question is, am I understanding this correctly from your written testimony that despite the different interpretation from DRA that the cities and towns that money would come out first, that the negotiated deal of the 3.15% has continued to be funded at the level that you expected?
I think it's been funded as expected. I think it's just been how the budget has been created. I think there are others who might know more about how that worked, but I think that was the spirit of how the budget was done with the 3.15% being considered before the towns.
Follow up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was there any conversation, and maybe I should be asking the ranking member about this, was there any conversation regarding this, 2009 agreement when the rate on meals and rooms was reduced in, 2021, I believe?
To 8.5%.
To 8.5%, right.
Not that I'm aware of doing different things with the formula. I am not aware of any.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Representative Ors.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for taking my question. So, are you concerned that we're going to see a large impact to tourism if this isn't accomplished? And what about if there are cuts to the budget in tourism?
I will say we're very concerned about cuts to the budget in tourism in general. This is kind of a separate issue that would deal with future budgets. So they're kind of two different conversations, but yes, very concerned about cuts to the budget because it's really important that travel and tourism be funded. When that funding goes away, we've seen in other states that tourism decreases. It's going to vary from state to state, but there are a lot of case studies from other states around the country that either cut completely or drastically their tourism budgets, and they saw decreasing visitation and therefore decreasing tax revenues as a result.
Follow up?
Follow up?
So, do we have any analysis as to like a certain reduction in the budget for tourism such as this decrease of possibly $4 million, I guess it is. What's the impact to tourism? Like, how much does tourism drop off, or does it drop off? At what point does it drop off?
I don't know that we have an analysis just yet. I think we can, like I said, we can look at other states and see what they've done and how much that's changed. Every market is going to be a little different. New Hampshire is different than, say, Colorado, who completely cut their budget 20 years ago and saw a massive decrease in visitation. Connecticut did the same thing. They cut theirs, but it was for a much shorter amount of time. Theirs grew back more quickly, but they saw big decreases. So the tourism industry, we're going to be sharing a lot of this information in the coming weeks. We've been looking at these different case studies, and we can show what other states have done and how that's impacted them. So we don't know exactly what that would be. I think there are other macroeconomic factors at play right now that could also impact tourism to the state. But I will say too that we are a drive destination for places like Boston, Greater New York, maybe not so much in the winter, but definitely in the summer months. And certainly for Canada, we know a lot of people, we already are hearing that people are canceling their trips from Canada because of what's going on. So we're concerned about what's happening on a bigger, more national scale. But we do fear that, our neighbors, for example, Vermont or Maine, might be able to pick up more of our visitors if they keep their funding at their levels, whatever those levels may be right now. Might, people from Massachusetts or New York or all those other places where they come to New Hampshire from might choose to take another vacation because they're seeing more advertising like come to Vermont, come to the Green Mountains, or whatever it may be. It makes a difference. People do pay attention to these things and they do act based on that.
Okay, so I would highly
Follow-up?
thank you.
Follow-up.
Follow up. So I would highly recommend you do an analysis very quickly. I have seen, having lived and worked in New York, particularly Manhattan, when they cut their tourism budget, it was a disaster for the state.
Yeah.
And so I think your team needs to do some real late night oil burning and get something together real soon. Thank you.
We've been working on it. Thank you for your advice.
Representative Breyer.
Yes, thanks. Thank you for taking my question. Again, I don't know if you can answer this because you but I saw a statistic for every dollar spent on tourism, it brings in about $15. Is there any actual
Plymouth State.
evidence that you came up with that number?
Yeah, so there's a data company basically that the state has hired to help them understand like the return on the investments that they've done and look at all that information. And so that's like for every dollar spent, it's $15 back in tax dollars to the state. That's an average over, I believe, the last 7 years, what we've seen in terms of those tax dollars, and that's based on the advertising spend. So it is a statistical data company that has been doing that
Follow up?
that study.
So is there some way that we could get that information?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Representative Elmy.
Well, I was just going to point out the Plymouth State had been doing analyses since before 2009. It's what we used as a base. At that point, it was $8, but it seems to have grown a lot in recent years. And
Yeah, we have seen it grow a lot. Anyone can go on to what's called travel stats. It's data that the Travel and Tourism department has, and you can see how much tourism has grown, especially since like 10 or so years ago. And particularly since the pandemic. We saw a drop, of course, in 2020, but then it really shot up. And I think that's why those numbers have grown so much. It's because we've seen such a marked increase in tourism to the state.
Seeing no more questions, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
The last pink card I hear is Mike Surs. You'll have to correct my pronunciation on that. Oh, Summers.
Summers. Mr. Chairman, that's my penmanship, not your reading skills, so I apologize for that. So for the record, my name is Mike Summers. I'm the president and CEO of the New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association. We represent a little more than 1,300 restaurants, hotels, tourism businesses from all corners of the state. And we are here obviously in strong support of SB 63. As Senator Lang shared with you, this is essentially a correction to the scenario that happened in 2021 as part of the reduction in the rooms and meals tax and the makeup provisions, et cetera. Representative Almy, I also was here in 2009 when we had the 3.15% discussion. That was a very challenging budget year as well, as I recall. But I just want to make a few points. Jess did a really nice job of covering kind of the tourism industry and the impact this will have, et cetera. But a few policy things and responses to questions that we have seen in some of the outreach from our members to the legislature. You know, there was an email that I saw yesterday that made the comment that, you know, the state shouldn't be in the business of marketing. That's the job of small businesses. And I would argue that that's probably not necessarily true. Let's not forget that the rooms and meals tax is your tax, not our tax, right? So we're collecting and remitting that tax on your behalf. And much like we market for lottery, liquor commission, other parts of state government, I think this is an essential function. This brings the business to New Hampshire, where we then can collect the tax and remit it to you at the state, which I think is incredibly important. I'll also make the point that from a marketing standpoint, you know, a small business in New Hampshire, they cannot reach into the New York, Pennsylvania markets, et cetera. They're barely getting by marketing in their local geographic region. And this is where the state's reach is critically important. They are doing the overarching, come to New Hampshire for all the wonderful reasons that we all know and love and enjoy, the great outdoors, tax-free shopping, you know, we have liquor stores on the highway, all the great things we have to offer. But unless somebody is telling folks in those markets, we're going to lose to the Maines, the Massachusetts, the Vermonts, the folks that are continuing to do that. I will also say one thing that came out of COVID, if there was such a thing as a silver lining, particularly for our industry, was that we picked up an enormous amount of market share in the tourism space. It is why, to the comment made a moment ago, that we have seen such a growth in tourism. Because when our neighboring states were closed, everyone came to New Hampshire. We all heard the stories, the lines around the corner to get into hiking areas and whatever it might be. That has been critically important, and it is critical that we continue to market to these groups and remind them why they love New Hampshire to keep them coming back. So with that, I actually have a couple of questions for this committee, if that's appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
We can start and see how it goes.
So my first question is, you know, what were your projections for rooms and meals tax over the next biennium? And the reason I ask the question is, you know, we within the industry, we're feeling real softness in the market. We're starting to see Canadian visitation is down. We saw it drop 15% in the month of February, which is concerning since that was a pretty snowy month for us based on the last few years. But then I guess my follow-up question is, you know, based on what we are seeing in House Finance, where they have cut the tourism budget by ballpark 53%, $7+ million, I'm curious what the adjustments were to the projections within that travel and tourism for the meals and rentals tax. Not sure if that's appropriate, but I am curious to know.
Well, according to House Resolution 17, which we passed a few weeks ago, we estimated that we actually had an increase here where the official estimate was 325 million. We estimated for fiscal year 2025 that would increase to 333, almost 334 million. And then in 26, 348 million. And in 27 fiscal year, that is 361 million. So we saw, or projected, I should say, small increases.
I find that curious because I can't think of an organization, for-profit, nonprofit, or other, that would cut their marketing budget and expect an increase in sales. I find that very curious. But
okay. Questions, Representative Orders?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your time and your question. So I understand the point you just made, unless you're marketing Bud Light.
Yes, certain activities can certainly hurt you. Yes, that's fair.
Follow up. So is the industry capable of taking some of the profits they've made over the years and making up any shortfalls if the budget is to be cut in order to reach out?
Frankly, no. Just being perfectly honest. And the reason I say that, couple of things. The first is, I watched some video for House Finance Division 1, and a comment was made that, the restaurants and hotels, they're busy, they're doing great. We are not doing great. There are a lot of people hanging on by their fingernails right now. And I say that because the rooms and meals tax has actually hidden the problem. And the reason for that is, when you look at hotel occupancy rates, we have seen occupancy rates soften and begin to creep down for the last, call it 12 to 18 months. There's a couple of blips in there where, July was busy, whatever it might be. But we have seen that reduction in the occupancy rates. The reason you aren't seeing those numbers in the rooms and meals tax is because we've been taking rate increases to make up that difference. And I will tell you that as we've come into the tail end of 24 and now the early part of 25, we are seeing not only are the occupancy rates continuing to remain low, but now we're also seeing the rates come down because they're trying to shore up those occupancy rates. So I think we're coming to kind of a perfect storm where I think we should be extremely concerned. But to answer your question more directly, I don't think that most of these businesses have had enough profit in the last 5-6 years to essentially try to make up those shortfalls in overall travel and tourism budgets, because many of them are still paying off debt, whether it be EIDL, SBA loans, whatever it might be that they had to take on during the pandemic to get us where we are today. And I am starting to see across the industry, the landscape, that we're starting to see a fair number of businesses start to close. Now, we are seeing some reopen in those spaces, et cetera, but boy, I'm not optimistic for the next couple of years. Not to be Debbie Downer, sorry.
Other questions? Okay. Representative Elmy.
Yes, a fair number of these places are not the large ski areas, but well, except the state one, are run as small enterprises. And they definitely are in trouble. We've got one that's been in trouble for years now, actually, but it survives through donations from the community. Have you seen that as a part of the problem, that this is not a time, this is a revenue generator, and this doesn't seem the time to be cutting at it?
Representative, thank you for the question. I would actually argue that this is the time we should be increasing our investment in travel and tourism. The reason being that a lot of these small businesses, and just with the macroeconomic scenario we find ourselves in, where we are starting to see less Canadian visitation, we are starting to see less general visitation. Even with as snowy a winters we had, I don't know that we have one ski area would raise their hand and say, wow, blockbuster year. I don't think it was. I think they did okay. I think they got through and did all right. But we saw reductions in occupancy in hotels. So those folks that did come, they drove up from Massachusetts, they skied for the day, and they went home. So I think we're going to start to see that trickle out through the system. I would also make the case that, yes, there are a lot of small businesses that can't afford to market at a level that would make a difference outside of the state of New Hampshire. Again, very geographic in nature. But I would also make the case that when the state promotes via the travel and tourism budget to come visit New Hampshire, you are marketing the places to stay, the places to eat. You are marketing tax-free shopping. You are marketing liquor stores, tobacco tax, lottery sales. All of these things roll up into the same numbers. And so I think that if you legitimately lower the rooms and meals tax, you have to start taking a look at what your projections are in those various categories, because I think it's going to affect all of them.
Representative Schamberg. Oh,
Representative Malloy was
Malloy.
next.
Okay. Representative Malloy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. You've mentioned a couple of times that occupancy rates over the last 12 to 18 months have been dropping. Is that specific to New Hampshire or New England in general, or are we unique in that? Do you have any perspective on that?
So I would have to go back and look more closely at the trend lines, but I believe that the U.S. numbers are actually continue to show growth. I think New England was kind of sort of flat, depending on the state you were in, and New Hampshire, it hasn't been like a steep drop. I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting it's this slow erosion over time that has me concerned.
Now, Representative Shanmugam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Summers, for taking this question. This analysis you've provided to us, was it also provided to the Finance Committee by anybody in your organization?
No, we were not invited to speak to them.
Yes, Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for taking my question again. You were saying it before we started taking questions there about the rooms and meals tax being lowered. Wasn't quite sure where you were going with that.
Oh, no, I mentioned that as part of the rewriting of this section of the statute in 2021, which included the catch-up provision, and there was also the lowering of the rooms and meals tax from 9% to 8.5%. If you recall, Governor Sununu was kind enough to do that for the industry. That's what I was referencing.
Okay, so follow up.
Follow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So did that help the industry?
I think it was a help from a promotional standpoint. I don't think it was enough to make a huge dent, but I also think that the state's in this spot where you can't afford to make a massive commitment to something like that. So I think it was best of intentions. I think it helped a little, but I don't know that it made a dramatic shift in the tourism industry. I think it's more important that we maintain the travel and tourism funding, because that is legitimately reaching into distant markets and bringing folks here, to include Canada, which will be a little bit more of a challenge, but New York, Pennsylvania, those kinds of places.
Thank you.
Representative Opal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question, Mr. Summers. I would hope you understand, and others who have testified here, there is, I think most of us, if not all of us, understand the importance of marketing and the importance of the travel industry to the state of New Hampshire, both in terms of revenue and other things. But this bill does create another concern for communities who are also receiving funds from Meals and Rooms. And this is not your purview, but I hope to hear from DRA in terms of their estimate, because I don't see one. But I hope you understand that.
Yes, and thank you for making the point. Yes, we understand it, but we would also ask municipalities to appreciate the fact that the rising tides lift all boats, right? The more folks we can have come to New Hampshire and spend on, liquor sales and rooms and meals tax and all those kinds of things, ends up being way more money to the municipalities, because we're talking about, I think it was like $3.5 or $4 million in totality spread across all the towns. It's kind of a pittance if you start breaking it up between all those different towns. Whereas that same $4 million, they may make that up and then some at the end of the day.
Follow up.
Follow.
But one man's pittance may be.
No argument there. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Seeing no more questions, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that's all I have for pink cards. Is there someone else who would like to testify on SB 63? Is anyone from DRA? Is anyone from DRA here? What?
We have a work session.
Yeah. Okay, seeing no one from DRA, would anyone else like to retestify on SB 63? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on SB 63. Okay, given the next hearing is SB 51 at 10:45, that gives us about 9 minutes until we start that public hearing. Okay, the time being 10:50, we'll get started, and I'll open the public hearing on SB 51 and invite Senator Waters to introduce the bill.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Senator David Waters, District 4, to introduce Senate Bill 51. And before I start, let me note that there was an error at OLS to not posting the bill as amended. So I know some of you may have been able to get the amendment. They have corrected that as of this morning, so that it has the bill as amended by the Senate.
And let me just add to that, that it looks like what was passed out to us this morning is only the original bill. There's no amendment at all. I printed this out last night myself, printed out the bill and the amendment separately.
I've got a copy of the amendment.
Okay,
So
some of
Mr.
us
Chairman,
have.
also, I'm sorry, they went oops when it was called to their attention, and it is now correctly posted, but my apologies to the committee because it might have caused some confusion. I will explain both parts of it. So the second part in particular, the amendment, is primarily housekeeping, as you'll hear from DES. So the bill has two parts. The first was brought forward at the request of the Fish and Game Department to ensure that the existing $5 boat decal fee, and renamed that as housekeeping because that's what the statute now says, will be directed solely to the fund for the state program on access to and creating boat ramps. The importance of ensuring that that funding is not used elsewhere is that funding, given Fish and Game's particular self-funding issues, means that there is funding there to provide matching funds from the federal government and from elsewhere so that we can do the boat ramp program. So by ensuring this, it means that if there's sufficient funds there, we'll have enough funds to match any grants that come in. But also having funds there means that there's less that has to go out to bonding and for interest rates. So there's no change in the fee there. It just specifies that indeed, it clarifies that this decal fee is exclusively for the fund to do the boat ramp program, which is why boaters happily pay this, because it is going to mean they have more access to our lakes and to the ocean through the boat ramp program. The second part of the fee, Department of Environmental Service asked, seeing the subject of the bill, if they could also bring in, and this too is a housekeeping. It has to do with the Lake Restoration and Preservation Fund. There's a boat fee decal for that, and it makes no changes to how those funds are distributed for milfoil and other exotic aquatic plants prevention program and so forth. But this part of the bill, and DES is here to speak to it, does the appropriate change from boat fee to boat fee decal, because that's now the statutory language, and makes a clarification that this is 270 E5A 2A. There had been just an error in the way in which that was written in the statute. So that is pretty much purely housekeeping, but Mr. Chairman, that's what this bill does.
And the fee of $9.50, that's not
No
a change,
change.
that's the current fee,
No change.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Representative Spar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm new to this, just trying to understand, are there two separate decal fees? One, and is it required that you get both if you have a boat, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the one goes to the State Boat Access Fund, and the other goes to the Lake Restoration and Preservation Fund.
So if I have a boat, I just need two different decals is required. That's the, okay, and
That's my understanding.
The last question was, when was the last time these fees were raised?
The Fish and Game one is deep in the midst of time, shall I say. I think it's been that for a long time.
And do these, is it revenue neutral? Do they cover the costs of the boat ramps that are being installed? Are we?
Well, thanks for the question. We can't spend any money we don't have. The importance of this is to allows Fish and Game to plan out over time what grants they can come in, that they have sufficient matching funds, and then they can let it build up for a couple of years if they know there's an expensive boat ramp project coming along, they can let it build up and make sure that they're not having to go out and bond for it. So that's the way they manage it. And I had thought we'd have someone from Fish and Game here, but we don't. But if you want some further clarification on that, I can do. Oh, I'm sorry, didn't see. Okay.
Representative Elmy.
Yes, I just wanted, because it's a very weird way of doing it, the special fund that this is talking about in, well, line 8 in the amendment, I didn't even bring the other one, is the Lake Restoration and Preservation Fund? Yes, the people
Yeah, I
behind
mean,
you are saying yes.
line 13 is 12 through 13. That's the existing fund.
Yes,
Yeah, and that helps us. And we have such a devastating issues arising from exotic aquatic species, milfoil, everything else. And there's, so much worry about this. And this is the existing fund. And it is one revenue source. I know there's an attempt to now have a special plate that could also contribute to this fund because of the needs there, but this is existing.
I think the people on the other side of the lane there are against more special plates, but just one follow-up there. In the way of Fish and Game, which is a very small and not very wealthy department, none of their dedicated funds are listed in dedicated funds. They come in as one group of all of these smaller funds that are inside of Fish and Game, I think, except for this one, maybe.
Yeah, thank you. And we had a study committee last summer, Representative Spillane and I, we set up to look at Fish and Game funding. It is a self-funded department with some general fund contributions starting a few years ago. But these small funds, while they may be small, are absolutely necessary for Fish and Game to be able to sustain its operations. And, it's like the hunting and fishing license. Other people gladly pay these because they want the services that Fish and Game provides. But we need to ensure that these funds are sustainable so that they can perform their mission, because otherwise it's no program or general funds, and I don't think we're going to do that.
Representative Ohm.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Waters, for your clarification in support of the boat ramps. Abba, would you believe? Would you believe that in my first campaign 15 years ago, the first home I talked to was a person who was complaining about boat ramps because they were in such bad shape they had to put mattresses in the ramp to get their boats launched. Would you believe that?
Yeah, I certainly would. And thanks for the question. And I mean, to me, the waters of the state are public waters, the lakes and ponds. They're not owned by anybody. They're owned by the people. And that's why this boat ramp access to me is so important, because I think it's the rights of the people to be able to have access to water. That goes back to colonial times. It goes back to common law. And I think this is one way that we have of ensuring that nobody tries to keep our water bodies private, that there is public access to it. And that's what the boat ramp, but they suffer ice damage. We have issues of parking around them. So it's a program that's really necessary, but it is also complicated.
Representative Schamberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator, for this question. When the money is collected and sent over to the treasurer for that account, does she keep it in a cash account, or is it invested before the DES can request?
Let me try to get an answer to that. I would imagine the
Thank you,
treasurer
sir.
does it like any funds,
Appreciate it.
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none.
Thank you.
Very much. Next, I have Garrett Grasskamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, for hearing my comments today. And certainly I'd be welcoming any questions that you may have. I'm the boat access coordinator for the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department. And Senator Waters did a pretty good job of providing an overview of how the boat access program works and related to the funding and so forth. This bill is trying to, or would, if passed, align the boat access, the dedicated boat access fund with the other three funds at the department, which are also dedicated funds, including the Operation Game Thief Fund, the Wildlife Habitat Fund, and the Fisheries Habitat Fund. All those have a provision that says those funds can only be spent on those programs and those objectives. And this would bring the boat access fund into that sphere of protection, if you will. We have 136 boat ramps around the state, which is a small number compared to the approximately 1,000 lakes that are over 10 acres in size, depending on what list you use. I think the official list from DES is 917 lakes, but I've also seen other lakes, other lists that put it over 1,000. The program's been around since 1983, officially as an RSA 233-A that came into that came into effect in 1993 with a $5 registration surcharge on every boat registration that is recorded in the state. That fee has not changed. We're not asking for that change today. We're only asking that the funds be protected. I think it's important that to reiterate that this fund also keeps us where we can from having to go out to bond for the boat ramps that we're doing. We did a boat ramp, well, the last two that we've done were quite expensive. We put in our first boat ramp on Lake Winnipesaukee back in 2021. That's in Alton Bay, and that was over $500,000 in fees. And we just completed a refurbishment of the boat ramp in Claremont, New Hampshire on the Connecticut River for another $500,000. And we're working on a improvement to the boat ramp at Newfound Lake this summer. We've just put out we're finalizing the contract with the low bidder as we speak. And that improvement that will allow people in wheelchairs to get into their boats without having to do it at the dock, which will create efficiencies for managing the traffic that goes through that heavily used boat ramp. This will be a remote platform that will allow transfers while the boat is still in their trailer. And that project is over $400,000 itself. So this is an important bill to protect the funds which maintain one of the quite valuable tourist attractions to this state. It promotes the economic welfare of the state by providing this opportunity for people from the state itself, but also from people out of state to enjoy our wonderful lakes in a safe and functional manner. And it will be a shame if we lost these funds being diverted to other situations. It has happened once in the past, so we want to avoid that going forward in the future. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you have now. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Spar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I understand, there are two decals, two applications. No?
There's one decal.
One decal. Okay.
Right.
Is there one fee of $14.50 then?
I'm not sure what the total amount is. I think if you approve, there's an amendment to ask for more money to, well, I'm not sure what the actual number is at the moment, but there's one fee. It covers the boat access. It covers the aquatic species protection. It covers OHRV, search and rescue, and maybe one other that I can't remember at the moment, but there's one decal that you have to have that covers all of that, that you've made that payment.
One follow-up, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I just seemed like it was inefficient having these two separate ones, and I didn't understand that. So it is one decal. The other question is, the gentleman before Senator Waters mentioned he can't even remember the last time that fee was raised from $5. Would it be appropriate, do you think, and I guess this is a question to you, would it be appropriate to put a 3% increase every year into that bill that would just allow this to keep going up with inflation, or at least with the cost of construction with these boat ramps?
I can't turn down money, but I don't want to lose the forest by trying to get a few extra trees at the moment. I want to protect this fee because I have seen it taken in the past. Certainly, I would be willing to work with you and any other representatives and senators and so forth to raise that fee. It is only worth about $2.26 according to the November CPI. And that doesn't take into account that the inflation on our shore banks, our shorelines for the lakes is probably hyperinflated compared to that CPI number. One of our main issues that we're having, if I can expound on, a tangent here, is that we're just having difficulty finding the opportunities to put in boat ramps. When we go and try and find a property, we are generally turned down because the people on the lake, it's their lake, it's not the public's lake. Now, the state controls the surface of the water based on the sovereign trust doctrine, but we can't control the shoreline. If the state doesn't have a property that they own with shoreline access, then we can't put a boat ramp up. So that's been an issue in the past.
Representative Elmy? Representative Ors.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for taking my question. So what do other states charge? Because I know I've lived in different states and have had boats, and there were ramp fees and that type of thing. So what, do we have any idea what's being charged elsewhere?
Each state in the United States has a slightly different way of doing this. They all get federal money, and they have separate ways of getting their state funds. In New Hampshire, we have a boat registration fee and no funding from the general fund. In other states, it's all general fund type money, without going into detail, which I don't have. Each state is slightly different, but they all take federal funds. When you take federal funds, if you charge a fee to use that ramp, you have to track that fund, that amount of money, that income, and put it back towards the federal money that you get. You can't double dip, if you will. You can't charge the people for something they've already paid for in one way or another. So we don't have enough boat ramps or staff. It's just not economic to put somebody at our boat ramps to collect a fee. Now you may say, well, you can put in one of those steel Rangers, with you put your money in and so forth. We have trouble just keeping the boulders in place when somebody wants to get through to get to where they're going. If there's money inside that rock, they're going to take it. So we haven't found that, or I wouldn't want to trust that payment ranger little column would survive more than a month. They'd let it fill up and then they'd take it. So it's difficult to charge a fee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So why not just put in a parking meter thing where they buy the access, they leave the ticket on their truck or whatever? I mean, that seems like a logical way to do it. That would sound like a no-brainer.
Well, it's just it's a similar situation to the non-manned ranger that we just talked about, where you just slip your money into a secure box that someone would have to go around and collect. So you'd have to have someone that's certified to collect that money for us. That's a person we don't have on staff at the moment. To put in a reliable electronic fee system at our boat ramps. We have people that just drive around, and circumvent, things that we have where we don't want them to park. And I think it would be difficult to maintain those units at even our main, our 6 or 7 most popular sites, where it would potentially be cost effective to put one of those in without them being damaged or vandalized. When we build, for example, this ADA platform that I'm building in Newfound, it's made out of concrete and steel, reinforced, so that we're not going to have, or we're going to have at least, we're hoping not to have any damage from that. Anything that would be as potentially fragile as a gate coming down or a card reader, something like that, I don't think it would survive very long. That's just my opinion, but based on how I see our boat ramps being treated around the state. They're not manned by anybody. We're not allowed to spend federal dollars to have a conservation officer or a police officer go and do a standard duty call at our boat ramp sites. So to have an attendant manage those, that type of collection system would be something that we'd have to charge a lot more money to just cover our costs. So it doesn't seem like it's cost effective at the moment.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what kind of damage are we seeing with concrete and steel at these boat ramps? And why can't we put up cameras, have conservation officers, police, as they just drive by these areas, do a ride through, checking for tickets if we're using that machine or whatever, or gate? I mean, if people are vandalizing it, it's time to lock their ass up.
Well, we're not seeing damage at our concrete and steel infrastructure because it's concrete and steel. We have not, as obviously we don't have any of these card collectors. Drive-bys would be difficult. Our conservation officers now, we're still undermanned on that. Back in the 60s, we had 50 conservation officers on staff. I think we're at 48 now, and it's been over the last 3 or 4 to 5 years where we've been able to bring that up from about 42 or so, or 40. It's been a struggle to get those positions filled and to have them paid for. But that's a separate funding issue with Fish and Game. And I'm not here to speak to that. I'm not qualified to speak with that. But I can say that our Fish and Game conservation officers cover about 400 square miles each. So to have them do a drive-by at our boat ramps and say there's 2 or 3 in a particular conservation area, detail area, would take away from the other important work that they're doing to protect our resources, protect our habitat, protect the wildlife that also brings in income to the state through tourism with the licenses and the hunting and the fishing that goes on. So I think that would probably cannibalize the value of what they're doing already and from some of our other programs. So yes, we could do that, and we do send out COs, conservation officers, to situations where there's an issue, and yes, if there's a fight and if there's a criminal or violation of vandalism situation, those people will be prosecuted just like they would if someone was walking down the street and vandalized the sides of a building or had a fight. But we can't be there 24/7, and our boat ramps are open 24/7. So it would be difficult to, protect these fee collection devices, if you will, 2 a.m, for example.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Representative Ulrich.
Just to synapse, with this bill, there would be a significant amount of money going into the fund. The fund would be secured. Decals are immaterial because the division of that takes place within the Fish and Game as to how the funds are received from the vendors. And the distribution of that fund is controlled by Administrative Services or DRA.
So the decal that we're talking about here is strictly for the aquatic so it gets split there. The remaining funds that come in for the other dedicated funds at Fish and Game, has nothing to do with the decal. The money goes into the money's collected at the DMV, as that's where you register your boats. The money is then transferred to the Department of Admin Services, who holds it in a special account for us until we draw it down. If I missed something.
Follow up?
Yeah.
Follow up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so the vendor, which in this case is DMV, sells a tag. That tag is then divided, or that tag is, receipt from that is sent to Administrative Services.
And they divide it out. Right.
Well, yeah. And then they divide it into each of the funds, and it remains in the funds.
Yes.
For activity by, and these are non-lapsing funds, if I remember.
Yes.
If I remember
Yes.
correctly. So they just stay there until they're drawn down and needed for the activities.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Representative Almy.
Yes, the only thing I see with this that might be of interest to us is that the other 3 funds in the decal have the magic language used by the treasurer's office to not send the interest to general accounts. The special fund shall be non-lapsing. This fund does not have that language yet. I consulted the treasurer and she said, yeah, you have to have that, otherwise I send the interest, which can't be a huge amount of money, but on the interest on what you're saving up for your boat launches. Yes.
You're right. I wouldn't mind getting the interest too, but
That's what we're talking about here.
yeah, okay. All right.
Send the interest to me.
Any other questions?
I'll take care of it.
Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? That's all I have for pink cards. Is there anyone else who'd like to testify on SB 51? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on SB 51. Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm going to open the public hearing on SB 107 and recognize Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. I'm still Senator Tim Lang. I'm still from District 2 to Lakes Region. The bill before you is a housekeeping bill. Again, brought at the request of the agency, Fish and Game Agency. This bill just allows the treasurer for the non-game species fund for revenues that we get to be able to invest. Apparently, they can't do that right now without explicit law approval. So this just adds, as you'll see in the bill, that one sentence in bold that says the state treasurer shall invest funds as provided by law, and any interest received on such investment shall be credited back to the non-game species fund. That's all the bill does. It just allows them to invest the money and then grow the account. But apparently they need legislative approval to do that. So now you have a bill in front of you.
Thank you. Representative Bors?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for taking my question. How big is the fund?
I actually have no idea.
Thank you.
Apparently enough that we can invest it.
Representative Schamberg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions. First of all, can you tell me what a non-game fund is?
Sure. So I'm not sure if he'll take the answer. He's
Okay,
be better.
I'll let
Except
that go
I'll
to the
probably
next
misspeak
one.
and say
Okay.
something wrong, like it has to do with gaming. I'm not sure.
Well, my second question then, Senator. The state provides a grant that has to be matched by by donations or whatever. Do you know if that was cut out of the budget process in the Finance Committee?
I have not been paying attention to the budget until it makes its way over to the Senate.
Thank you. And when it gets over there, would you look at it?
Sure.
Representative Almy?
Thank you. I guess this is what happens when you've got an ancient agency that isn't paying very much attention to the niceties of the rest of the law. But the only thing this is changing, obviously, is that giving permission to the state treasurer to invest the funds. The state treasurer has been getting the funds for a long time. What's she doing with them?
Good question for the treasurer. All I know is I spoke to the agency. They asked me to be allowed to invest. Sometimes we'll get funds, especially matching funds, where the number could be significantly large. And we want to be able to invest that and earn the interest off at the maximum rate possible. The treasurer asked that we have this ability to do that, and that's why we have this bill.
Representative Schamberg?
Mr. Chairman, could we ask the state treasurer maybe to come in sometime to address some of the questions about interest and things?
We could, or we could send an email to that organization as well. Yes, Representative Almy?
Yes, I think the email would be a better route. I emailed her already about the interest in the previous one, and she said, yes, we need that specific language.
Okay.
So
that's our answer.
I
then.
guess, yeah,
Okay.
I guess she's just been holding that money without investing it.
Well, I
in
mean,
this case.
maybe it's just earning regular bank interest.
That would be, Mr. Chair, was my understanding, is basically putting a bank account, whatever minor interest a bank account generates is what they would get. And this would allow them to do more aggressive investments so we can get better return on our money.
Yeah. Possibly even putting it into a CD, maybe, just my guess, but that would be better than a regular bank. Representative Almy?
Thanks. I've been giving money to the non-game account for quite a long time now. It is run in order to provide money for all of the rest of the animals and birds and things in our wildlife area that people do not shoot. So, or trap or whatever. I just wanted to say that they are getting matching funds from the state government. It looks like it's gotten down to a pretty low number, but they are getting some matching funds into it. So that also would be in this category.
I don't have a question for Senator. I have a question for Representative
That's
Long.
fine. Representative? Go ahead.
Thank you. I understand the state provides a $100,000 grant that has to be matched. Is that what your reason? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Senator Lang? Seeing none, thank you. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
All right, and next up is Mike Manhand? Marshand, okay. The C looked like a N.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. Thank you. Thank you for Senator Lang for sponsoring this bill. So I'll provide a brief testimony. I think I can answer a few of the other questions that came up as well. So I'm here representing the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department in strong support of Senate Bill 107. So just a little bit of background, as Representative Almy had mentioned, the non-game program is focused on all those species that aren't actively hunted, fished, or trapped for. So that makes up about 80% of the actual species in the state, so the vast majority. And if you include invertebrates, which we are also responsible for, there's thousands of species. So lots of species to have responsibility over. Our job is we do research, we do monitoring, we do management. We do a lot of technical assistance to the public and private landowners. I provided a copy of our Wildlines, our quarterly newsletter, which kind of summarizes some of our work, just as an interesting tidbit for you to look at. And our funding is rather unique in state government. As was mentioned, we really depend heavily on private donations. So when our program was established in 1988, it was established that, was mentioned, there is a general fund contribution set up in statute. It started as 50,000, and after I think 30 years, it went up to 100,000. So it's currently 100,000. We have to raise dollar for dollar private donations in order to receive those general fund contributions. That general fund is critical to us raising those funds because it's a strong motivation for the private donors to provide those funds. And as far as I know, that is still in the budget. I believe that's the only fishing game, only general funds that are currently in the fishing game budget because it's set up in statute. We do not, as a program, receive any hunting and fishing license sales, which is the primary revenue source within the department. So we really need to kind of raise our own funds within the program. Why it's really important to try to hold on to and increase any funds that we could possibly can. So that's the bill here in front of you today. We've actually had donors reach out to us specifically requesting this. A few donors that have sizable amount of money that they want to contribute to us. They want to be part of their legacy, but they also want that interest to come back to the program so that we can have those positive benefits impact the environment into the future. So that's essentially the bill here. Obviously, looking to increase funds in any way we can, and with a lot of other costs that are hitting us right now, this will help defer some of those costs with just inflation, wage increases, as well as the final thing I'll mention is we also bring in a lot of competitive federal funds that we have to go after to maintain our program. All those federal programs require matching funds. So both the general fund contribution and the private donations are critical to bring in more federal funds into the state. So thank you to all our donors, and I'll take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to testify on SB 107? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on SB 107. And now I just want to, I need to talk to a couple people, and we may exec one or two of these, so hang tight, and I will be back to the microphone shortly. All right, sounds, what I'm going to do is open an executive session on SB 51 and recognize Representative Almy for a motion. Oh, what? We'll hold on one second. The clerk, this was unexpected for the clerk. So hold on another minute. Thank you.
1 minute. Do I hear 4? Do I hear 4? If anyone's interested, the stock market is up. No, excuse me, it's down. No, I'm sorry, it's up. No,
One, and I'm going to recognize Representative Almy for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move ought to pass on SB 51 as amended by the Senate.
Do I have a second?
second.
Second by Representative Ulary. Would you like to speak to your bill, Representative Almy? Or your motion, I
Well,
should say?
my motion. It's not my bill.
Right.
This is a simple technical correction to allow the state treasurer to include as a non-lapsing fund which one is this one?
Vote stickers.
Boat stickers. No, it's not the boat stickers. It's a quarter of the boat stickers.
Yeah.
Decal fee.
I guess it is the boat part of the boat decal. To include the final special fund, which has not been included as non-lapsing in the boat decal. That's not very intelligible, is it?
Okay.
Yeah. The boat, we forgot to ask about this, actually. The other 3 of these that are in the boat decal
Aren't part of the bill though.
aren't part of the bill.
And they're already in non-lapsing.
And they're already in non-lapsing. Oh, well, so let's just ignore that. This includes the, in the boat decal, feed decal program, the monies collected for lake restoration and preservation methods, which are to be a non-lapsing fund which will allow the interest from the fund to be used for the purposes for which the decal was purchased.
Thank you.
Something like that.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The motion is ought to pass on Senate Bill 51 relative to decal fees and the statewide public boat access program. Representative Ulrey.
Aye.
Representative Cole.
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Sodi.
Yes.
Representative Ors.
Yes.
Stephen Smith is not present. Representative Tierney.
Yes.
Representative Breyer is not present. Representative Ford.
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
Representative Almy.
Yes,
Representative Southworth.
Yes.
Representative Malloy.
Yes.
Representative Schaumburg.
Yes.
Representative Bolton is not here. Representative Elberger is not here. Representative Jeffrey Smith. Not here. Representative Opal.
Aye.
Representative Spar.
Yes.
Chairman Janigian.
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yeah.
I count 15 to 5 absent.
No,
and
15 to 0.
15 to 0, 5 absent.
Yeah. The vote being 15 to 0, any objections to consent? Seeing none, we'll put this on consent. Oh, you need a green sheet.
Oh, I forgot about that. I'll write it up later.
Okay. All right. I'm going to close the executive session on SB 51. Ready? Okay, I'll open the executive session on SB 107 and recognize Representative Almy for a motion.
thank you. I think I can do this more easily. The non-game species account on.
No, I'm sorry. You
Oh,
need to
sorry.
get a second.
Need a second.
So your
Ought to
motion
pass.
is
The motion is ought to pass.
not to pass.
Seconded.
Seconded by Representative Ulrey. And now you may speak to your motion.
Okay. The non-game species account protects all wildlife which is not usually hunted, fished, or trapped. It has been sent the monies acquired by Fish and Game Department for this purpose have been put into the Treasury for decades without authorization to the state treasurer to invest those funds. Therefore, they have only been earning interest, and on this bill will allow the inclusion of them in the investments by the treasurer, which we hope will increase the income to cover inflation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Yes, Representative Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are we voting on the amendment 0557? I believe the original bill was missing the effective date, and the amendment adds it.
No, I don't think so. It's coming to our committee. The Senate has already amended it. So it's coming to us. If we had added an amendment, then it would be OTP as amended. So for us, it's just OTP. Thank you for the question, though. It's good to get that clarified. Any other comments or questions on SB 107? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The motions ought to pass on Senate Bill 107 FN as amended by the Senate with Senate Amendment 0557S. The bill enables the state treasurer to invest certain fish and game funds. Representative Ulrey.
Yes.
Representative Cole.
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Sodi.
Yes.
Representative Ors.
Yes.
Representative Stephen Smith is absent. Representative Tierney.
Yes.
Representative Breyer is absent. Representative Mary Ford.
Yes.
Representative Mary Murphy.
Yes.
Representative Almy.
Yes.
Representative Southworth.
Yes.
Representative Malloy.
Yes.
Representative Schomburg.
Yes.
Representative Bolton is absent. Representative Elberger is absent. Representative Jeffrey Smith is absent. Representative Opal.
Aye.
Representative Spar. Chairman Janigian.
Yes.
By a vote of 15-0 with 5 absent.
The vote being 15-0, the OTP motion passes. And I don't think we can put this on consent because it does have a fiscal note. Is that your understanding, Representative Almy? It's 107 FN. I think if it was an ITL, then it wouldn't matter, but since it's OTP,
Yeah,
We don't know how much money it is, so,
yeah, so it's,
it may go to finance.
no, it wouldn't go.
can't
Oh.
go to finance.
Okay, but it has to just be presented. Okay, so this will not go on consent. I'll close the executive session on SB 107. All right, that concludes our work for today. Let me just check to see. I don't have the schedule of what we will do yet for next week, but I can tell you that I believe we only need one day next week for our work. And so we will do that on Tuesday, April 15th. And so probably starting at 10 o'clock, and schedule will come out soon. By Wednesday, you'll probably have the, have that. Yes, Representative. Almy.
Yes, could you check with the clerk about how we refer to, or maybe Jennifer knows, how we refer to a bill that came from the Senate that's been amended by the Senate? Because sometimes I get told that since it's been amended by the Senate passed it, therefore it's just the Senate bill. It's not as amended.
That's the story.
So it's appropriate that we did an OTP motion and not OTP. Yeah, okay,
Oh, yeah, that definitely.
yeah,
There's no committee amendment by us.
okay. Anyone have any other questions? If not, yeah, we'll plan on Tuesday, the 15th as our next meeting. Thank you.
Tax day.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes, if the
tax day.
Republicans could stick around, we're going to
Well,
just have a quick
kind of.
caucus.
We're gonna go somewhere else.
Okay.